This is a gift. The air that's in our lungs right now, that's a gift. It could be gone in a moment, and it doesn't belong to me. It's never belonged to me. I'm not entitled to it, and neither are you, right? And so when we can operate that way, we have a lot of control in our life, even when life seems out of control, right? Versus ceding our control by being the victim and looking for other people to solve our problems.
Do you think that we've gained that in society, or do you think people are more adapt to just say, hey, I'll just sit and wallow in where I'm at?
Discomfort is the birthplace of resourcefulness. And yet we avoid discomfort like the plague. And yet we avoid the very things that allow us to transform much faster and much more aggressively than we would transform without those things in our life. And so in pursuit of comfort and ease, people are actually crippling their own abilities to solve their problems.
Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to be a part of the community where you can listen to more content to help you be a smarter, stronger, and better equipped, successful leader. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button. I would love and appreciate your support. It's amazing to me to watch the community grow and read all of your comments each and every week. I can't wait to go on the journey with you. Thank you so much, and it means the world to me. Welcome to the Impact Driven Leader podcast with me, your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. On today's episode, I'm sitting down with a friend that I met this spring. So excited to spend time with him. Was on his show, Ian Pruckner. Ian is a former pastor. He's a serial entrepreneur, consultant, speaker, best-selling author. He has built 7, 8, 9-figure businesses in finance, real estate, e-commerce, and IP spaces, including a multiple 8-figure exit. He was born and raised in Michigan. We've already gone through it. Don't worry. He's from the OK side. And he currently resides in Siesta Key, Florida with his wife and 3 kids. Dude, good to see you again.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm glad to be hanging out, Tyler.
So let's jump into it. Like this transformation and kind of like a thought that comes to me, you've transformed, your life has transformed, you serve people in an effort of transformation. How did your life transform, the process of transforming from your early career as a pastor into as you're serving people today?
A mentor of ours says, right, change is a given, but growth is optional, right? And so, change and transformation is going to happen whether we want it to or not. The question is, are we going to do anything positive and productive with it or wish for the good old days, right?
Yeah.
I don't know those people. They peaked in high school. They're still listening. They love the same music. They still looking the same, right? And
dude, every once in a while, I'll get on like some music from like the 90s that I miss. And I'm like, dude, this is... okay, it takes me back, but all right,
that's a banger.
It takes me back.
That's a banger right there, you know?
Yeah.
But when you live in it all the time, right, because you haven't grown past that, right? Life changed, but you didn't change. That's where it becomes problematic, right? But yeah, dude, one of the things that has been so interesting in my life is just staying open to what God has for me, right? Like we have our plans and then God has his plans. And sometimes they're the same. But many times they're not. Just look at Jesus, right? Like the nation of Israel was looking for this warrior king and they get a baby in a manger. It just didn't look like what they thought it was going to look like. And I think that's how God works so many times in our life. So I was a pastor and I loved it. I loved what I was doing. It wasn't a job. It felt like a calling to me. And I really, really enjoyed it. And Tyler, like if anybody in your audience knows a musician or lives with a musician, like if we can make money playing music, we're the happiest people in the world, right? Like it was my dream. I really loved it, but I was broke. And so I was working 3 other jobs on the side and I was newly married and I was working for a church as a worship pastor. That's what I was doing. And like I said, I loved it, but it just wasn't making things happen. And then 2006, about 18 months before the big recession in 08, 09, I was in Detroit Metro. We were the first people that felt it. I don't know if you remember, but the big 3, right? Chrysler went bankrupt, GM went bankrupt, Ford didn't go bankrupt, but was almost bankrupt. I mean, it was not good. And so working for a church where they survive off of charitable giving, when there's a downturn, charitable giving is the first thing that goes, right? So like midsummer 06, we knew something was wrong in Detroit because there was no money anywhere. There's real estate values started falling. It was real crazy. And so I ended up getting a pretty big pay cut at the church where I wasn't making very much money at all to begin with. So I was working 3 jobs. I was working for the church. I was working like 80 hours a week between all of them to make 40 grand a year total. And then my pay got cut. And I'm like, well, I don't want another job, right? Like this is not working well for me, you know? So like my radar went up. I was making 30 of the 40 at the church, right? And so my pay cut was 10%, $3 grand, or $250 a month. And we did our bills when that happened, and we were going to be $250 a month negative. I mean, we were on thin ice. We weren't going negative, but we weren't getting positive either. And that pay cut put us into the negative. And so my radar went up. Like, how am I going to make an extra $250 a month? And you know what my best idea was, Tyler, is I was going to be a night manager at Rite Aid, which is like a convenience store, right? And I was going to work 3 midnights a week for $14.55 an hour. That was my best idea. And after taxes and withholdings, that would have made back my $250 that I was missing. And that was what I was going to do. And a boss of mine at the church came to me. He's like, hey, are you still looking to make extra money? And I'm like, with all due respect, you're my boss. You see what you pay me here, right? Like that is the dumbest question you have ever asked me in my life. Of course I'm looking to make extra money. And Tyler, he said something that changed my life. He said, there's a guy that goes to the church. He does this thing. That's what he called it. He says he does this thing. Yeah, does this thing. And you'd probably be good at it. And you could do it part-time. You should talk to him. And I didn't know who he was talking about. I never met the guy before, but I got his numbers. I called him. I said, hey, my boss said you might have an opportunity for me. When can we chat? He said, how about in an hour? I'm like, okay, sounds good. So he gives me his address. It was a Wednesday afternoon in August of 2006. And so I left my job at the church. My wife worked for the church too. She was sitting at the front desk. I waved her goodbye. I'm like, hey, I'm going to meet this guy. I pulled up to this guy's house, Tyler, no joke. Huge castle-looking home on a lake, right? And so I grew up in Royal Oak, Michigan, like back before it was trendy. My parents still live in the same 900 square foot house we grew up in, right? Like we had a lot of love. We had a lot of amazing family cohesion, but we didn't have any money. And nobody we knew had any money. Nobody in our family. We were really, really blue collar people. So I pulled up to this guy's house and I'm like, if this guy's not selling drugs to kids, I'm in. I don't care what he's doing, right? Like I was smart enough to understand he knew something about making money that I didn't. And instead of hating him or being jealous of him, right? Everybody wants you to be now, right? I decided to learn from him. I'm like, this guy knows something. I'd be a fool to not at least try to get his knowledge because he clearly knows something about making money that I don't. And so he showed me his business. It was in the financial space. I didn't know anything about finance other than I didn't have any finances. Right? Like I didn't know anything about that. But I looked at this and I said, here's a guy that's willing to teach me. I could do this part-time. What do I have to lose? I gain a skill set and maybe I make some money. And if half of what this guy is saying to me is true, I got to be smart enough to make a couple of $100 a month. And so that's why I started in that first transition. And it really wasn't supposed to be a transition, honestly. It was like I was trying to meet my basic needs, right? Like that's what I was trying to do. And over the past 15 years, it just got wildly out of hand, right? Like it just carried away.
Let's stay right here because one, I think we're closer to this environment in today's world than we've probably been in the last. Yeah, exactly. And
Yep.
One thing that you mentioned there, and for people listening, I think it's oftentimes either ourselves or someone else we know, hey, this might be something you're interested in. Do you think you would have been open to it before that pay cut?
I know I wasn't open to it because, ironically, 9 months earlier, a different gentleman in that same industry actually met with me about it, and I could have cared less. I'm like, this is interesting stuff, but I just don't care. I'm not interested in this. It's not right. And he didn't follow up with me. Had that guy followed up with me, I probably would have gotten involved with him, but he didn't.
Do you think it was a matter of the desperation of the moment, or you were not in a mental place to like embrace that opportunity? And maybe it's both.
It's primarily the first, right? So Tyler, if you gorge yourself on Thanksgiving dinner, and you eat so much like me that your neck hurts. I don't know if any of you in the audience have the neck pains after Thanksgiving, but I do consistently. How motivated are you to go out to McDonald's and crush a couple of double cheeseburgers 30 minutes after that? Like none. In fact, you look repulsed right now for those of you.
Yeah, what's funny is my son, we were driving by McDonald's. It's right beside Target, right close to our house. He's like, Dad, when's the last time you had McDonald's? I'm like, 2013, 2011.
Get behind me,
I don't
Satan.
know.
Oh my gosh.
I
was there earlier today.
Okay. So the desperation of the moment drove you to look at the opportunity of growth and change.
Yeah, and that's sort of my superpower, right? Is I take the bad things that happen to me and I try to learn from them instead of sit in them, right? Like most people who had that same thing go on felt like, woe is me, or this isn't fair, or where can I get another job doing the same thing that I just got terminated from before, right? Like they're just not being very resourceful, or they're wishing for things to be the way they were instead of adapting to where they're going.
Well, I take that what you're sharing, and we just mentioned, like right now is about whether it's politically, whether it's financially, whether it's just things in the world today. As you're in the space still of coaching and finance, and what I'm viewing, it's like, ooh, this seems eerily similar. I would be stupid to not be aware because of what we've been through, right? I've been through that. And what I wonder here is, as you talk to people, and as we're talking about this transformation and people being owned, you were open to it at that age. Do you think that we've gained that in society, or do you think people are more adapt to just say, "Hey, I'll just sit and wallow in where I'm at"? And then maybe that's a bad way for me to say it, but I'm good enough where I'm at. I'll just ride the course. I'll ride the course of the church. We'll cut back $250. Like, give me your perception.
I think it's worse than that now. I think it's worse than that. I think people are today actively looking to put their responsibilities onto other people. Now it's gone from like, oh, this sucks and woe is me, to what are you going to do about this for me? You owe this to me. You owe that to me, right? And nobody owes you anything. This is a gift. The air that's in our lungs right now, that's a gift. It could be gone in a moment, and it doesn't belong to me. It's never belonged to me. I'm not entitled to it, and neither are you, right? And so like when we can operate that way, we have a lot of control in our life, even when life seems out of control, right? Versus ceding our control by being the victim and looking for other people to solve our problems, right? It's like, hey, look, you took the loan, you pay it back. You don't like this, you make a change. You own these things, right? And it's like, look, dude, it's so interesting. I want to take you back real quick to 08, because this is important. Actually, a year before that, my wife and I, we got married really young. In our first home, we bought a condo in a little town in Michigan, and before the downturn. We paid $145,000 for it, haha, which is like nothing today. But that was like a reasonably priced condo, right? And then all hell broke loose in the economy, and they were converting these apartments over to condos. Well, they only did about 30 of them before the downturn hit out of 300. So then the condos became unwarrantable because not enough of them were over. So then you couldn't refinance them and get loans against them. But everybody had these 3-1 balloons, right? Where they had like an interest only for 3 years, and then you refinance out of them. Well, you couldn't refinance because you couldn't get a mortgage because the property was unwarrantable. Like that, I had to write a $30,000 check to that mortgage or they would foreclose on me. I didn't have any money, right? This is a $145,000 home, right? Like you don't have a lot of money, but like that forced me to like go into overdrive and figure out how to make money so that I didn't lose my place. You know what I mean? But today people are predatory lending and the bank owes me and give me a forbearance and this thing and that thing. It's like, dude, right? Like, no, we agree to stuff. We go make things happen. And that births resourcefulness. Discomfort is the birthplace of resourcefulness. And yet we avoid discomfort like the plague. And yet we avoid the very things that allow us to transform much faster and much more aggressively than we would transform without those things in our life. And so in pursuit of comfort and ease, people are actually crippling their own abilities to solve their problems.
Yeah. Do you think you had that resourcefulness, or was that in the moment and with a little bit of mentorship? Did you have that early on?
Everybody has that, okay? But it's been buried underneath lots of social training, okay? So let me give you an example. You have kids, right? Okay, and so when they're born, these little suckers, man, they don't care what time it is. They don't care how you feel. They don't care what you want. They have a need. They're going to let you know by screaming and crying until you meet that need. Period. They don't care who's around them. They don't care how you feel about them. What if they talk bad about me? Like, they don't care. They want what they want. And they're going to get what they want. Period. Right? But then you go to kindergarten and you want to get what you want. And the teacher comes and sits you down and says, well, listen, Tyler, you really hurt Timmy's feelings when you took the ball from him and when you asked him to do ABC. And we don't do that here. We need to play nice, and you need to make sure that people's feelings don't get hurt and all these things. And that's great. And I'm not about, hurting people's feelings for fun and stuff like this. I'm not a proponent of the bully culture, although I can see the comments now. This guy just loves bully culture. Okay. But what they have taught you is how to suppress your wants and desires and needs and subjugate them to the need of the whole. Right? And then more and more of that happens. And then somebody laughs at you for what you wear, or you speak up in class and they call you stupid, and you start learning, like, maybe it's just better for me to hang out below the radar. Maybe I just don't make any waves, right? I don't want to be a try-hard. That's what they call the kids in school that aren't breaking you're a try-hard, right? It's like, wait a second here. Every one of us, listen, as a species, we've been walking around for at least 5,000 to 6,000 years of recorded history. At least that long, right? Okay. And every single one of your dadgum ancestors has made it long enough to get you here, right? They survived. And you have that wired inside of you, right? And then it's been beaten out of you, right? Born relentless, taught to relent, right? Like, that's what we are. And so I think everybody has that in them. And I think the people that get the most out of life are the people who can figure out how to hold that sacred, that spot, and how to live out of it authentically. And they're not always everybody's favorite person, but you're never going to be everybody's favorite person, right? I mean, that's just never going to happen.
Yeah. So, you wrote about this in your book, Byproduct, the T-bar, the thoughts, belief, actions, results. Really what you're sharing, I believe, there is the foundation of that, the thoughts that we have that lead to all the other things. Where did you come up with that? How did you, really, we're talking about resourcefulness. We're still in the same spot, but it ties into what you've spoken about and written about. And I'd love to know that process and journey for yourself in that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in our first business, we ended up having over 30,000 people that we worked with in terms of training and leading. And it became almost a passion of mine to study the difference between people who win and people who don't, because most of them didn't win, but all of them could have won. And then some of them won so wildly big, it would take your breath away to see some of the transformation. And I became absolutely enamored by this idea of what creates winners and losers. How do two people have the same exact opportunity, resources, products, tools, training, and have such wildly different results with it? And as I began to study that, this framework of T-bar really became evident. It was something I started teaching on many, many years ago. And what it was a way for me to understand the process by which results occur. Like, most people, Tyler, they just suck at connect the dots. That's literally their only challenge in life. If they could just connect the dots.
So I want to go here because there's been moments. We talk about one of our mentors, and I remember years ago, John Maxwell, he in his book, Change Your World, and talked about doing roundtables. And I'm like, John, I just don't understand it. And then when I figured it out, I'm like, it's not that hard. So tell me, why do you think people struggle connecting the dots?
Because sometimes there's space between the dots that distorts our vision of what's occurring between them. In other words, like, why do people smoke? It's not lost on anybody today that you're likely going to die from that. It's going to cut your life,
or cause major complications.
Statistically, listen, I came out of the insurance business. It's not an opinion. It's a statistic. You are going to die 7 to 10 years earlier than you should. And maybe you're the one that doesn't, but for every one of you, there's 1,000 that follow the rule, right? It's just a math problem. Why do people still do it? Because they don't die tomorrow or next week or next year or next decade, right? So cause and effect have a great distance between them, and the distance creates disassociation from the consequence, right? Well, the same is true for good things. Why don't people save money, Tyler? Right? You stick $100 a month into an index fund for 40 years, you a multimillionaire. Why isn't everybody a multimillionaire? It's not because they didn't have $100. It's because they're not going to be a multimillionaire for 40 years. And so I'd rather use the money today for something I want than to put it here because there's such a time delay. For most people, it's the delay between cause and effect that hurts them. The second issue is clearer paths to wrong answers. Let me give you an example. So T-Bar says thoughts become beliefs, beliefs become actions, and actions become results. And so when we want to change our results, let's just talk about going to the gym. Dude, you're a pretty buff guy. You spend some time lifting weights. Probably looks like you watch your food. It's a.
Yeah, I don't go to McDonald's. We talked about this already.
Hey, listen. Hey, I go to McDonald's.
Hey, now I could actually. There's some good things at McDonald's. Chicken sandwich. I mean, there's some. Don't. All right. Stay on track here.
Yeah. So, anyways, so like, let me give you an example. We'll use fitness. Somebody might look at their results and they might say, I want different results. That's how most desire for change starts. I'm unhappy with where things are in my life. They need to change. So they say, well, I'm going to lose some weight and I'm going to tone up and I'm going to feel good about how I look. And so results, if you work T-Bar backwards, results are the byproduct of what we did or did not do. They're the most clearly connected byproduct of that. And so what most of us do when we want to change our results is we attempt to change something we do. And that makes sense because what we do is getting us what we've got. The problem is, Tyler, our action is not an island. It's not just there randomly. It is actually a byproduct of our believing and our thinking. And so what most people want to do, Tyler, to change their result is they try to change their action. The problem is they don't change the belief that created the other action to begin with. And so they change for a week or a month or a year, but eventually they always work their way back to who and where they were before. Because they didn't change that, they can't ultimately change their outcome. They run out of willpower sooner or later. And so T-Bar is a process that creates autonomous improvement. If we can get our thinking and our beliefs right, then we will act as a byproduct of those beliefs. And so think about the gym rat, the guy that's at the gym 6 hours a day. And that's like what he does. I promise you, he didn't like lifting weights or eating clean any more than anybody else listening to this. But today, it's part of what he does. He loves his results so much. And his belief system and his thinking are one where he actually enjoys that. He enjoys his communities there. He shows up trying to make purposeful gains, right? Like it's just a different way of approaching the same thing. And so most people, most of the time, don't get what they want. I always tell people, Tyler, the biggest gap in the world is the gap between knowing what to do and doing what to do, right? And that gap in between the right thinking, I know I should be doing this, and doing, which is the action, is the belief. I know I should be doing it, but I don't think I'm worthy of it. I don't know if it's going to work out. If I make this commitment, what happens if I don't win? We have these self-sabotaging belief systems that sit subconsciously, and they never translate to action. And so if we can learn this, then we can make real change. And we can make change relatively effortlessly. Let me give you one more example of this. We'll go back to the smoker. Their whole life, kids have been like, Dad, stop smoking. I want you to be here. Spouse, stop smoking. I want you to be here. Everybody, you got to go stand outside like a second-class citizen and sit in the rain to smoke your cigarettes. It's taking all your money. Nothing happens until the day you go to the doctors and says you have emphysema. If you don't stop smoking now, you're going to be dead in a year. And all of a sudden, you don't even want a cigarette anymore. You don't need a patch. You don't need a vape. You stop. It is game over for you. It's like the guy who doesn't take care of his health and has a heart attack, right? It's all of a sudden, now it is time to change. Why? Because our belief has changed from, this may or may not affect me to this is affecting me now. That's a belief change. And the action is just the byproduct. Why I can't do this anymore. It doesn't make sense. I'm living in this eventuality. And so learning how to create that reality before actually having to live in it is a really interesting key of top performers, by the way. They learn how to create those circumstances, faux circumstances, before having to live them in reality.
Do you think your mentors, you talk about the guy with the big house, right? Who you went and saw and you're like, whatever he's doing, I'm in. Was that part of the having the mentor to transform you, giving you an opportunity where the beliefs could turn into actionable results that help this?
Or even a place to get those source beliefs from, for sure.
So someone who had those beliefs themselves.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings is you can't expand your own vision. Somebody's got to do that for you. Right? You see what you see.
Say that again for me, because it was so good. I want to make sure the audience hears it. Is someone's sitting there that they hear that, because that's good.
Yeah. You can't expand your own vision. Somebody else has got to do that for you. In other words, we think how we think. We are surrounded by where and who we're surrounded by. Our inputs, our sensory inputs are largely the same all the time. And so we need to be around people who are further than us to help give us new inputs, right? And so for me, that initial mentor changed an enormous amount in my life, because for the first time I was in close proximity to somebody who had what I wanted. And I saw how he moved. I saw how he treated people. I saw how he made decisions. I saw what he valued. I saw what he didn't value. I saw what he kept at a distance. I saw what he held close. I saw where he put his money. I saw where he put his time. I saw where he put his talents. I saw where he put his energies. I watched all those things, and many of those things were sort of like common sense, but some of it is stuff you can only learn in proximity of those people. And so having a mentor or a coach or a community where you are surrounded by people who are further than you is invaluable, because more is caught than is taught, right? And I caught a lot from him, and he did teach me a lot too, but more was caught than was taught, right? I was a prodigious noticer, right? Because again, it goes back to that love of studying the difference between people. What was it about this guy that made him so much more successful than all these other people? It was infinitely curious to me. Well, why could this one dude have so much and all these other really nice people, great people, love God, love their family, work hard, but they're not winning like this guy's winning? What does he know? And what does he do that these people don't know and don't do? That's where the gold is. And so I spent a lot of years mining that out.
So would you say that once you understood that, the transfer of that into your other entities, your other expanding ventures, was just a matter of plug and play? It might have been a little bit different, but it was still the same thing.
100%. Success leaves clues, right? And it has principles that it operates on. And so, yeah, this year, Tyler, I'll have my fourth source of income over 7 figures for the year. Okay. 4 different industries, 4 different verticals, right? Probably next year I'll have a 5th. And to me, that's fun. It's fun to go learn something new and try to play it at a high level, and then sit it and go do that again, because the principles are the same. They're transferable. It's the details and the nuances of the execution of those principles where specific knowledge and expertise lives. But yeah, it's the same thing over and over. One of the best word pictures that I ever got of that is, imagine standing on a beach and you look 100 yards down and all of your heroes are there. All of the mentors and the legends and the people you look up to, and they're all standing there, they're waving at you and they're saying, come over here, come over here. And you look down, you're at one end of the beach, they're at the other end, and there's hundreds of the people, but there's just one set of footprints between you and them. I'm like, how do all these people get over here? There's hundreds of people, there's one set of footprints. It doesn't make any sense. So you ask them, they say, well, we all walk the same path. That's how we all got here. It's the same steps, right? So you just got to walk those steps, right? Instead of making your own. And that's what we want to do. We listen to our coach who say, yeah, but, well, I know that, but yeah, but it's different. Well, you don't know what I've been through. Well, where I live, or the people that I deal with, or my family situation, or my finance. We have this great way of deluding ourselves into thinking that our problems are unique to us and that we're somehow special in some way. And you're very special to your creator, but your problems are not special. There's nothing new under the sun, right? And so find some people that have solved those things before and get close to them and learn from them and then do what they did. And that was me. My first mentor there, he told me it related to business. He said, Ian, you're not allowed to have an original thought till you're making $250,000 a year. That's the litmus test to know that the current thinking is working. Below that, you ain't even working right on the current ideas, right? Like you don't need new ideas, bro. You haven't mastered the current ones. And I took him at his word. I'm like, I'm just going to do what you tell me till I'm making X. And once I know that I know this, then I'll start wandering over there. But man, we're great at leading ourselves off cliffs, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned the inactivities. That's one of the barriers I haven't believed that is an issue in leadership. And it really comes back to the belief in making up the stories. And, for example, it all of a sudden along that path, maybe it's a little harder. Maybe the steps a little bit deeper. Maybe you got to go over a log. Maybe it's a little bit of quicksand. Maybe it's a little muddy, but those same steps are there. Other people just endured and got through it instead of, oh, there's a log there. I can't step over that. Right? Is that a good mental picture for you, kind of thinking about those experiences?
Yeah, I think, it's that old adage that obstacles are what you see when you take your eye off the prize, right? Okay. But it also it just goes back to your belief system. Do you believe success is supposed to be really easy and very simple and not cost you anything? If so, why? Do you have any examples of this that you can point to? Well, a lottery winner, no, I'm not talking about people who got lucky. I'm talking about people who earned what they got, right? Do you have any example of that? No. Well, then why do you think that that's how it should be? Well, that's how I feel it should be. Well, why? You don't have any frame of reference for this, right? So our belief system and understanding, I expected it to be hard because it's rare. There's a reason not everybody has an amazing life and doesn't wake up in the morning and be proud of who they see looking back at them, and compromises at every left and right turn they can in their life, trying to get comfort and a shortcut somewhere, right? And there's a reason for that. And so frustration is when we have unmet expectations, right? And most people's unmet expectations just a faulty belief system. And so I expected obstacles. I still expect obstacles. In fact, I expect them to be bigger, more challenging, and harder to deal with, right? Because that's how you advance in life, right? The fact that you're where you are is because you handle stuff that other people can't. And so that's why. And so having that right belief system helps us to stop packing up our tent and going home when we encounter adversity. And instead we say, aha, I was expecting you, and let's dance, right? That's a much better way to approach the inevitable eventualities of negativity, opposition, setback, challenge, distraction, etc.
So we've spent a lot of time talking about thoughts and beliefs, talking about the obstacles, talking about mentorship. How much was it your own personal belief system, or coupled with the belief system of your mentors that saw something in you that helped really form the belief that you have in yourself today?
It's a good question. So I'm a lot like a turtle on a fence post. I didn't get there by myself. Yeah, dude, it's an amalgamation of sorts, right? So I would say more than anything, it's the Bible that has given me my identity and my belief system. It's pretty hard to lose in life when you know who you are, whose you are, and the price that was paid for you. It's pretty hard to think you're not worth it, that you're somehow inferior, or you were a mistake, or that you're missing something that you need, when you understand the massive price that has been paid for you and for I. And so to me, that's my foundation. Right?
Can we sit in that moment as friends? And I think about the person listening that maybe doesn't have the same belief system that you and I, the same faith, the same foundation. And I wonder if, we're just two people sharing what we've been through, right? I think it's really hard without having some foundation of belief to have hope. Meaning, and how much of that really is the hope that you have, no matter, going back to the obstacles, like, hey, that's what this journey is about. Is that, do you believe, if we sit here and we say, all right, Ian, but is it the belief or is it the hope that the belief looks at and understands that gives you that like confidence?
Yeah. So that's a good question. First thing I would say is if you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh, I don't know about faith and God and all these things. Number one, I respect you. Okay. I want you to understand that. Number two, I'm so sad for you. I'm so sad that you go through this life not knowing the one that made you and formed you and knows you intimately and has an amazing plan for you and wants to walk with you every day through your life. So let me say that first. The answer to your question is multifaceted. For me, I've never had like this wild spiritual, emotional experience or whatever. But what I do is I can look at what God said to us through his words, what he said about us through his words. And I read that and I've got to do something with it. I've got to say, I don't believe this. I don't think it's right. Or I've got to say, I think this is right. And I'm going to assimilate this into my life. And so as I looked at that, right, like God says some pretty amazing things about you and I and about his love for us and his depth of care for you and I. And there's super famous verses, right? Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for good and to give you a future and to, right? And all these sorts of things. But we got to look at that and say, okay, is this real or is it not real? If it's real, then that's a promise that I can stand on. And last time I checked, like this dude is a pretty good promise keeper, man. The world's been hanging on nothing for 5,000-6,000 years, doing great. You know what I mean? Like this guy knows what he's doing and this is his operating manual. And so, it's like user error, right? Like imagine having a car stereo system and there's an operating manual from the maker that says, hey, if you press this button, here's how it works. And you're just pressing all the buttons like me because you're super impatient. And then you put it in Spanish by accident and then you really screwed. You can't get anything.
You can't get back and you're like, how did I get here?
Yes. So to me, like that was, I just chose to trust the owner's manual. So I don't care what Tyler thinks about me. I care what God thinks about me. And I want Tyler to like me, but I'd much more rather be approved by God than approved by men, right? And so when those two things are at odds, I'm going to choose that. The other thing that really did like a foundational belief was just this idea that God has a plan for my life and it's for good and to prosper me and to give me hope and a future. And so if it's not good, God is not done. And so that was a reality for me where most people get stuck in their challenges and they just wallow in them because they don't know where to go and they feel really down and defeated because they're trying to carry it in their own strength. And for me, I could look at that and I could say, this is not fun. This is painful. This hurts. I need to learn and get better from this. But if this ain't good, then God's not done yet. This is not finished. And so if it's not finished, I'm not finished. And because I'm not finished, then I need to look for what I can do, where I am with what I have, and take my next best step. Even though sometimes I may not be clear on what it is, I can do something today to move myself forward. And that has been invaluable to me because motion, just the motion gets things going. You know what I mean? Like when you've done all this stand, right? And like I've so many times in my life, dude, I'm like, this sucks. I don't know. This doesn't seem fair. It's not right. What do? I don't know. But I can stand and I can do the next best thing that I know how to do.
So we talk about that foundation, that belief system. Working in tandem with the mentors, the proximity close to you that probably said, man, Ian, I know you can do this. I see something in you, or you have the passion, the desire, the ability. Is that what happened for you?
Yes and no. So okay. Again, cause and effect, connect the dots. When I do A, B happens. When you really know that you know how certain things work, not how everything works. I don't know how everything works. And look, dude, there's crap that happens in life that you and I aren't going to have an explanation on this side of heaven. And that's okay. And that's fine to know. But there are some things that we can predict over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? With like relative certainty. And so I learned those things. And so that's where the confidence came from, right? Like I know this It's not an idea or a what if to me. I know that I know that I know that when I do X, I'm going to get Y. Eventually, it's going to happen. And so the confidence came a lot from that. It was helpful to have other people believe in me, right? Like that's always helpful. I think everybody needs a cheerleader once in a while. I think everybody needs a leader consistently. But to me, it was not my faith in other people's opinions of me as much as it was faith in I have done the work to study this out and I know how this works. And so I'm going to run really hard at this and I'm going to trust that process because I have done the work to do that. Like what I found, Tyler, is most people don't really believe what they believe or know why they believe it. They hope, but they don't. Hope and belief are not the same thing, right? Belief is a continuum. It's 3 steps, right? It starts with possibility. To have a belief, you first got to believe that it's possible. Then it moves from possibility to probability, right? So not only is it possible, but it's likely because of A, B, C, D. And the final state of belief is certainty, right? So we always act on our belief. So imagine you're on vacation, you're at a hotel, it's 4:00 in the morning, all the fire alarms start going off, right? And it's not good, right? You see people running down the staircases, the elevators aren't working. You'd grab your family and your kids say, I don't know if it's a drill or not, but we got to get outside. So you'd get up and you'd go outside. And if there was no fire, it was just a drill, it still changed your behavior because you believed with some level of certainty that this could be bad. This may be a negative thing. And so I'm going to act on that, right? And so most people don't have that level of certainty. They wish and they hope and they pray, but they're not quite sure, right? And so there's like an action threshold, right? Like there's a certain level of certainty we need to have to do something. And so most people never eclipse that action threshold with their beliefs because they never test them. They never try them. They never poke at them. They never try to understand what really built them to begin with. They don't think about what they're thinking about.
Well, what I go back, if we go back to the framework of the T-bar, is they've taken whatever thoughts to lead into a belief, but they haven't taken those thoughts to drive you from possibility to certainty that is going to elicit the action that will bring results. So just kind of hanging out there, just like, well, I'll sit there and I'll accept it because maybe it's comfortable and it sits in the environment that I'm in, but I don't go to the extent of taking it beyond possibility to certainty and then be willing to act no matter what.
So I have a favorite saying, and that is when we get better, things get better. When we get better, things get better. I think most people, when they hear that would say, yeah, that's probably right. When I get better, the things around me get better. Okay, great. Well, what did you do today to get better? Well, okay. Well, then you don't really believe that. Like it's a nice saying. It's a nice maxim. But do you really believe that when you get better, that your life will get better? Because if you did, you wouldn't mind investing in that mastermind or that coach or that book. You wouldn't mind spending the hour with the podcast. That wouldn't be a big deal. You wouldn't have to force yourself to do it if you really believed that. You would just do it because when I get better, things get better. And so I'm going to get better as fast as I freaking can, baby, because I want things to get better, right? You can tell what people believe because we always do what we want, period. We always do what we want. What we want to do, we do. And so what we think we want and what we actually do in between there's a problem with what we believe about those things. And that's the heavy lifting, dude. People just want the next catchphrase. They want the new marketing funnel. They want all this crap and they don't want to fix them. And the problem is wherever you go, there you are, right? Like you're going to be there in the future. You got to get it.
Well, it's where coming through the different industries that I've come through, from agriculture into, consulting, into owning a gym and network marketing and coaching and speaking. And it's one of the things that I struggled with in the beginning. I told this to someone the other day. It's like, I originally did not want to hire employees. And I grew up in a farm where it was like, the difficulty of employees. And I didn't want to have employees. And I didn't want to write a check. I didn't want someone else to write a check that I'd have to cash. And what I've learned is people that want to leave a job or an industry because of the employees are running from their own personal growth.
Yeah, I don't want to be a better leader and create empowering cultures around me. I just want to complain about people.
Yeah, I don't want to get better in work on the insecurities that I have that are leading to some of the problem. Now, granted, I believe not every situation in employment, whatever, is going to be fixed, but it's how you deal with it. Do you look at it as, oh no, here we go again? Or it's like, hey, you know what? I can empower this person to grow, and maybe that's grow elsewhere, but I get to have the power to do that with excitement as opposed to, oh my goodness, I have to deal with these problems again. They're right back to when we get better, things get better. What am I doing to get better? I love it.
And I call that CSL as well, current situation limitation, which is really an interesting idea. And that is looking at future problems, but solving them with today's thinking, right? So this is the guy that looks at the big house and says, who would want to live there? Their utility bills must be outrageous. Or the property taxes. Dude,
yes, I love that. The property taxes.
Dude, I just paid my property taxes $107,000 for the year.
Okay.
107.
Okay.
107K for my primary residence, right? And I'm like, dear Lord, that's a chunk of change, right? Like first 6-figure a year property bill. But then you look at it and you're like, well, you don't ever have houses like that with that level of thinking, right? Like the taxes aren't a big deal to you when you're ready for something like that, right? Or like, who would want to clean it? Well, not me. I don't want to clean it either, right? So I pay somebody to do it. But CSL keeps people stuck, right? Like the employee thing you're talking about. Well, right now I have problems with employees, so I think that's always how it's going to be, without seeing the version of you that becomes a better leader, the version of you that becomes more patient, the version of you that has more grace, the version of you that loves the people he's leading, not just has to deal with them. You don't see how that person deals with those challenges, which is really different than how this person deals with those challenges. And that's the catch-22, right? Because it's like we can see the path, but we can't because we're blinded by ourselves and our current situations.
So one final question in as we wrap up here, and I want you to share about where people can learn more about you and the War Room and all that stuff, but it's how has this mentality transcended yourself? How is the mentality of the beliefs? And if I just follow the path in front of me, if I'm willing to embrace the pathway of transformation, how is that transcended Ian?
We've been really blessed to be surrounded by a lot of great people for a really long time in a lot of different industries, and to have made some level of impact, some more significant than others, by investing into them and by trying to live our message, right? And so, dude, I could tell you so many stories of people who came to me hurting and in different areas of their life that weren't great, that are now like just absolutely killer human beings. Not just crushing it where they thought they wanted to crush it, but like, know the Lord now, are raising their families in that way, right? Are giving back to people in incredible ways, believe in themselves, value themselves, have their weight under control, have their marriages under control. It's been really special. But one story I'll leave you with that just goes back to this idea that when we get better, things get better. And that if it's not good, God's not done. And so I grew up with a kid. His name was Nathan. He grew up 2 blocks down from me. I bought my very first guitar from him. His mom threw it out the window and it was broken, and I bought it for $20 and my dad repaired it. And that actually became Career One, which was a musician, right? And so he was a couple years younger than me. His mom died when he was like 12, and he got involved in like all sorts of not great things. And so we ended up going to school together, but I was 2 years ahead of him, and he was just in a different crowd. He was in a party crowd and living crazy, and gained a lot of weight, became very, very heavy set. And we ended up reconnecting in business. I actually brought him in to our company, and he did okay, but he struggled for a couple of years. And he actually got to a place where he wasn't doing what he needed to do. His weight was not in control, just had a lot of things not going his way. And like, he was super broke, and like, I'm going to lose everything sort of broke. And I can remember meeting with him and his wife at the food court at the mall in Michigan by where we live. And I'm like, dude, do you believe this stuff? Do you believe that when you get better, that things are going to get better. Do you believe that if you're willing to make a sacrifice, that God will honor that sacrifice? Do you believe those things? Because preparation is the greatest act of faith, right? Prepare, start doing that. And so I had a really tough conversation with him. He's in a ton of debt. He was 1 foot out the door on his dream. And I'm like, look, dude, sell your house and move into an apartment, take your equity, pay off your debt, and start at zero. Just get out of your hole, start at zero. And dude, nobody wants to do that, right? Like, you got an image to maintain, and I'm going backwards and all these things, right? But he did it. He did it. And he cleared out his life. Dude, 6 months later, Nate found a gentleman, and that guy has broken every record in Nate's company's history. And Nate makes 70, 80,000 bucks a month now in mailbox money. And he lives a great life because he didn't quit when it got hard, because he really did believe that God would honor his sacrifices and his commitment, that the price he was paying was not for nothing, and that he was willing to continue paying that price, even when it didn't make sense, even when everybody around him told him he was crazy, even if it was going to work, it'd work by now. Why are you doing this? That's the one thing you have going for you, your house, blah, 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 blah. Right? But we try to model this behavior for our people. And he was one of those models. And it's so fun to watch all the success that he's having now, and to know that that whole thing happened in 10 minutes at a food court at the Great Lakes Crossing Mall with somebody who was in a bad spot but had the right thinking and the right mentor and the right heart of coachability, and everything changed for him. And so it's transferred. That's one story of one person, but there are thousands of stories, Tyler, thousands of stories, and the ripples of those stories. I could tell you about our orphanages in India. I could tell you about the stuff we do here in the community in Sarasota. I could tell you about our family members that we've retired or take around the world or do it. I could tell you all of those things. But for me, it's those individual stories of people who overcome the things trying to hold them back in their life and walk into the purpose that God created them for. That's the transference.
Just to put a cap on that, it's the idea of when we get better, things get better, coupled with sometimes the step forward is being willing to take that humbling step backwards to be on better ground.
So good. I remember one dude, Tyler, same situation, but he had an image to keep up, and he just refused to downgrade his lifestyle, even for 6 months. He's like, nope, I have to have this. I have to have this. And that dude gave up on his dream. And he's okay. He's doing all right. Makes a couple $100,000 a year at his job, but he's not breaking any records. He's counting the years down till he gets to retire. I mean, he's not living a wide open, around the world, wake you up in the morning and keep you up at night, take your breath away sort of life. He's just not. He could have been, but he didn't believe.
And that's what I was thinking. Just that belief of what would it take? Am I willing to step out because of everything that you've, impressed in that belief, but yet I'm still stuck on the possible rather than being certain.
It's a process, which is why you got to get in a good community, get around good people who think right, who have the results that you want, who are people who you'd like to be like, not just winning in one area in all their areas.
Well, I mean, it's how we've got to know each other, and thankful for the, even after we got to know each other, the realizing the network of people that similar, and just realizing that, hey, it comes back to it's those people that share the same beliefs, but as well can be someone's like, man, I believe in you. Like, we hold these beliefs, they do lead to those results. And it's not just I don't want to say a fantasy, but it's not something that isn't real. You got to do the work, but it can't happen.
Absolutely. And it will happen if you do the things you need to do for the time that it takes to get it done.
Where can people learn more about you and everything that you're doing?
Oh my goodness. Go follow me on Instagram at Ian Pruckner. I always have good stuff out there. You can see all the different things we're doing. There's a link in my bio there. You can go to the website, see some of our different offerings, courses, groups, a lot of free stuff out there, a lot of paid stuff out there. But I just invite you to follow me there. It's always a good time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And all the viewers and listeners, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. By rating and reviewing each episode, you can help more people find impactful leaders like Ian. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.